Tony Leonardi and the Youngstown State University Jazz Ensemble.
My next interview is with bass trombonist Eric Dragney. Eric is the band leader of Cleveland's own big band, the Sketch Anderson Orchestra, and he is also the owner of Perfect Choice Entertainment out of Cleveland, Ohio. Here is Eric Dragney. Hi, I'm here with Eric Dragney this evening, and he is the founder and musical director of the Sketch Anderson Orchestra here in Cleveland, Ohio. Hi, Eric. How's it going?
What's happening, Paula?
Oh, same old. How are you?
Good. Things are going well. We're in the holding pattern as things go, but still trying to do some playing and keeping definitely busy.
Good. And how are your podcasts going?
The podcasts are going well. It's called the Big Bandology Podcast. Did about 21 episodes so far this year, and had a lot of fun with it. Taking a little break right now, but going to come back and start doing some new episodes in December for Christmas, talking specifically about some Christmas recordings or Christmas big band charts and so forth.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, we'll look forward to that for sure.
Good. I'll keep you posted.
Okay. Yeah, please do.
Yeah.
So to start off this evening, I wanted to ask you how you got into jazz and what made you choose trombone.
Well, I got into jazz around second grade. So what is that, about probably 8-9 years old?
That's really early.
Yeah, well, it wasn't not really totally my fault, I always say. A good friend of mine who lived down the street from me is another person you might be talking to, fellow YSU jazz alumnus, Mike Kammoth. And I had never met Mike before, but he went riding down the street on his bike, and I was playing in my front yard. And when he came back, I said something about, hey, we should get together and, like kids do. Hey, let's play sometime. So I went over to his house. He lived about 8 houses down from me. And when I walked in, there was jazz music playing, and his dad was a jazz drummer. So a lot of times when I would come over, he would be sitting in the living room in his rocking chair, and he would have a practice pad, and he would have headphones on listening to music, and he would play along with them. He'd have like one thing of his headphones off his ear, so he could still hear people talking, but he could listen to his music. And so that's where I started hearing a little bit of that. And then of course, hanging out with Mike, since there was a lot of that music going on, a lot of big band and jazz, small group. That's kind of where it started. And I developed a deep love for especially big band music. I love small group music, and I love trios and everything else, but really my full passion wound up being big band music.
Okay, wow. That's really cool. I didn't know that you knew Mike for that, going back that far.
Yeah, we are longtime friends.
Cool. So how did you end up at YSU, and how did you end up meeting my father?
Well, I wound up at YSU once again, kind of, it was Mike's fault. He and I went to different high schools, but we wound up still, of course, being in the same circles for things when we were juniors and seniors. He's a year older than I am. So when I was a junior and he was a senior, we put together our first big band with friends of ours from both of our high schools. And also around that time, he had auditioned for the all-star high school jazz band for OMEA, for the Ohio Music Education Association. And that year, the director was your dad, was Tony. So I kind of met Tony, although I didn't really meet him through them. Mike had a couple of conversations, because as usually happens here in Ohio, when they have rehearsals, one of them winds up getting snowed out because it's always in the middle of like January. And then the conference is the beginning of February. But that was Mike's exposure to your dad. And when he came back home from doing OMEA, I talked to him, and he was just like, he was signed, sealed, and delivered to go to Ohio State. And he came back home and he said, man, I'm going to go to Youngstown. And I was like, you are? He said, yeah. He's like, I just had the most amazing experience, and I think I'm going to go to Youngstown. So I was like, okay, cool, man. And so when he was down there his first year, I went and visited him, sat and listened to a rehearsal, met a couple of the guys that were there at the time. I can't remember if he introduced me to your dad or not at that point. But then the spring quarter of that year, myself and saxophonist, also YSU jazz alumnus, Dave Coaches, and I both drove down to hear the spring concert. And we got there, we sat there and listened to the third band, and it was a pretty good band. And we both went to Trinity High School in Garfield Heights. We thought we had a pretty good band ourselves. Even for high school, we played some things that were similar to what that band had played, some things by Rob McConnell and some other things that were a little challenging. But we heard the third band and we were like, wow, that band's pretty good. This is going to be good. And then the second band came out, and at that point, Mike was playing lead in the second band. And just personally, he was one of, and probably still is in his, as much as he's playing, one of the best lead players I ever heard. He could play, he grew up listening to Maynard, so he could play all this high screechy stuff, way up. He had double C's in high school, double high C's, which is one of those golden notes that guys play, just way up there, that not very common. So I sat there and thought, well, if he's the lead trumpet player in the second band, what's the first band going to be? So the second band came out and they were roaring, and we're like, wow, okay, well, this is good. I don't know what to expect. And then the first band came out, and it was literally, they could have been a road band. They could have been out on the road touring just like any band. They were unbelievable. They were total pro. In fact, I believe at that point, the lead alto player playing in the band that year was Dave D'Angelo, who had come back to do his grad work, but was the lead alto player for Buddy Rich's band. So we left, drove home, and I just said, man, I don't know, I'm going there, because that's the music I want to play. That was the stuff that I grew up on, that I listened to. And I said, if there's an opportunity to get in a band to play that stuff, that's where I want to go. So I thought, okay, well, I'll go there and I'll do my time. I'll play in my third band, and I'll practice, and I'll do everything I have to. And then I'll play in second band, and then I'll play in first band. And I'm sure after the concert, I at least said hi to Tony, hi to your dad, but still, I don't think I really got the chance to talk to him as much. But that was really why I wound up going to YSU, was just the experience of hearing the work that he had done with the bands and with the musicians that were there.
Wow, that's so cool. I love hearing that.
Yeah.
So what years were you in the band?
I was there from the fall of 1986 to spring of 1991. And then I left. Although at the time when I left, even though, yes, if you do the math right, that is 5 years, I had not finished my music education degree. I wound up moving back up to Cleveland and just never wound up quite finishing it. I had to do all of my education class. So I literally probably had just about a year left to student teach and so forth. But I wound up coming home and figured I would go back and finish it. And unfortunately, I didn't get the chance to. But fast forward to 2 years ago, I'd always wanted to be a Dana School of Music graduate, because I was always I'm very proud of the time that I was there, what I learned. It shaped me as a musician, as an educator, and that's where I really got my training. So I wound up talking with Dr. Randy Goldberg and worked out and figured out how I could finish my music degree in performance through Dana. And I got the chance to do that 2 years ago. So I'm an official YSU alumnus, not just an alumnus of the jazz program.
Oh, that's wonderful. Congratulations.
Thank you. Which I was really happy to do. And a couple of people, people had asked me, they're like, well, why do you want to go back and get it? What does it really do? I said, well, it was just important for me to do. I had gotten a degree. I have an English degree also actually through Cleveland State that I had gotten in the interim. And just somehow or another, the timing came up and I had asked the right question at the right time. And Dr. Goldberg said, well, let's look at what you have and maybe we could figure something out. And I said, I always really wanted to be in a graduate of the Dana School of Music. And he's like, yeah, I think we could probably make that happen. So, and he did, and I did. So that's why I'm glad I can be part of the YSU Jazz alumni and part of the alumni of the jazz program as well.
Oh, absolutely. And I know you do a lot to help the alumni, and you're helping with this project as well. So,
right. Yeah, I always enjoy working with any of the bands that I wind up booking and contracting, working with the YSU guys that played, because we all have that mentality. Everybody knows, especially from the era that I was in, a little bit after, obviously before, but we all kind of share that kindred bond and that understanding of how things go and how things need to go, and kind of the standard that we all bring without even having to talk about it, which makes contracting and working with guys so much easier and really a lot of fun and really a joy to do. So I always love working with the YSU graduates and even some of the kids that are that in the program now I've gotten the chance to work with. And there's some really good players that I've gotten the chance to work with recently. But, so usually I'm all about working with YSU folks, with the YSU jazz folks.
Oh, that's great. That's great. So while you were there, you were part of the Things to Come album, right?
I was part of that. And I was also on the Live at Peabody's album in 1989, I believe it was. And 1991, that was the last year that I was there. That was the last quarter that I was in school, was spring of 1991 when we did Things to Come.
And where did you record that?
I think we did that at Right Track Studios.
Okay.
Here in Cleveland. And that was an interesting day, of a long day of recordings and multiple obviously multiple takes and so forth. But again, something that was totally not expected was we were going through all the tunes. Your dad had picked out all the tunes that we were going to record. And then right towards the end, I want to say it may have been even the last tune or the second last tune that we were doing, or we were going to do, he asked me if I wanted to play Pennies from Heaven, which was the senior feature piece that I did was going to do for the concert. I can't remember if we had done the concert already and then did the recording. It's what old age does, I guess. But in either case, he's like, hey, do you want to play Pennies from Heaven? You want to lay it down? And I was like, do you want me to? Sure. That would be great. And he was like, yeah, if you feel up to it. And it's a very demanding piece of music, not even just for me. The part is difficult. And when he looked at me and said, hey, do you want to do that? And I said, sure. And he wrote something. I can't remember exactly what he wrote, but I know he wrote a little bit of something about every tune that we played in the liner notes. And it was great. It was Tim Leahy plays a solo on it, and the lead trumpet part is just stupid hard. And it was late in the day, and It was Mike nails it, and it was an incredible experience. But again, it wasn't on the radar as far as I knew that we were going to do it, and we did.
And when I listen to that now, I'm still completely blown away. I mean, you listen to it and it's impossible to believe that you guys are in college.
Yeah.
It's like, what?
Right.
The caliber of talent is so unreal. And did you guys have any idea? I mean, it was really successful. I mean, it was recognized by Downbeat magazine, right?
Yeah. I mean, I'm pretty sure both of them got a lot of really good feedback. There's the funny the funny part in the Live at Peabody's recording where your dad is talking about the description or the explanation of the YSU Jazz Ensemble, and he's reading the comments about it on probably in the newspaper article or whatever, but it was like the fire breathing YSU Jazz Ensemble, and the appropriate attire to wear that night were asbestos suits. And it just cracks me up still to to hear it. But that it was, if it wasn't the best band in the state, then I don't know which ones were better. And I don't say that because I'm in it. I mean, just the quality of the people. But again, the other part of it that was so interesting about it was that we just did it. There was that standard level that we knew we had to live up to and that we all wanted to. But there wasn't a question of, oh, well, it was just, we just did it and we knew what we had to do. And again, obviously we went through the process, and your dad set that expectation immediately. Of course, at that point, a lot of us had been in the band for so many years for it. We knew it very, very well, but there was that expectation, and you have to have that. And when you do, great things can happen. It doesn't mean that every band has to be ridiculously awesome. But when you put some type of expectation out there and people know it and understand what it is, I think it helps the growth of you, not just as a musician, but as a person too. Because we all worked together. We all knew what we had to do. And if there was a problem, we definitely found out about it. I can tell you one of those stories a little later. But even now, when I work with bands, a lot of times the most interesting comment that I get is I'll talk to a lot of people, a lot of bands, people that run bands and so forth. And I always get this kind of disclaimer from some of them where they'll be like, well, yeah, our band does this tune or our band does that. And I know you guys do that, but it's nothing like your band. And I'm like, well, okay. I mean, I'm very, very fortunate. And again, I say through all the things that happen in life, I'm very, very lucky and very, very blessed to have the opportunities that I've had and the opportunities that I get to be involved with. It's what makes this COVID time really hard, because I can't play with the band. We can't play together. But, it's not just, yes, there's a lot of great musicians that I get to work with. And that's awesome, but it's still just creating a great moment. That was something that again, something that your dad taught us was like, when we walk on that stage, it's on, and you put it all out there. And if we didn't put it all out there, we found out about it, but we would know it too. But when you left at the end of the night, in most cases, the room would just be so full of energy and passion and just people walking around going, wow, when can you, leave them wanting more. Right.
Right.
So that was one of the things that we all learned. And I definitely use with, the things that I do with my own groups. The true magic of an educator, and your dad, for, as many people will tell you, I'm sure if you were to talk to everybody over there, your dad's approach to education and music and performance was not for everybody, because it could be very intense. And some people just, they couldn't hang with that. And it doesn't make it bad, or it doesn't make it, it doesn't make them, not worthy enough or good enough to play. It's just some people just, that's not the vibe that makes them productive. And so for me, and for a lot of the people that were there, I had heard the stories, I'd heard some, obviously some stories of, basically being taken down pegs, during rehearsal. If you're not prepared, if you're not at the level that you need to be at. Tony was never shy to tell people whether or not he liked what you were doing or he didn't like what you were doing. Most of the time, if he didn't say anything, that was the best. That meant you were right where you wanted to be. But it was knowing how to push those buttons, or knowing how to get what you wanted out of the people that were in the group. If you had people that were really strong soloists, you knew how you had to work with them. If you had people that were better section players, he knew what to do with them. But he also gave people opportunities. And again, there's a lot of that mechanics that of teaching and learning and getting people to play maybe a little bit better than they even think they can themselves. And that was where a lot of us, that's where you buy in. That's when you start talking about things like the team mentality, or the group mentality. When you have somebody that's up there that's getting you through things and explaining things, or showing the passion that they have for what you're doing and what they're trying to get you to do, it can be a very powerful thing. And that was one of the things that, as it went for me, made such a big difference in my life. There are probably really only 3 people that I look at as true mentors of teaching me about how I do and what I do. And that's Mike Kammoth, who I grew up with, Dennis Reynolds, who I also wound up playing with a lot of bands, also a YSU jazz alumnus, YSU alumnus. And because of all of the experiences that he had with Clark Terry and Snooky Young and being on the Basie band and all that, and learning those things from him and your dad, those are the 3 people that I will always look at and say, the reason why I am where I am today is because those are the 3 people that taught me all of the things that I felt like I needed to be able to play at a high level and be able to hopefully teach people or have bands that can perform at high levels.
What would you say are the style that my dad used? You kind of touched on it, but what kind of set him apart from other educators or role models that you had, as far as the techniques that he used, as you said, to get the best out of people, or even more than they even knew they could produce themselves?
Sure. One thing that I think was, and I know I mentioned it a couple times, is first off was the passion that he had for what he did pretty much at all times. Obviously he's just like anybody else. Things can happen, as I'm sure a couple of stories have come up. He was a huge Cleveland Indians fan, so if the Indians were playing bad, you knew you were in trouble. But for the most part, his attitude and his mentality was from 3:00 to 4:00, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday for first band, or from 3 to 4 on Tuesday and Thursday for second band. That's my time, and you have to be engaged only here. You can't be anywhere else. You need to leave everything else outside the door and make sure that you're focused for this right now, and that's it. And so you knew it. And So you had to make sure that you were prepared. I mean, he would lock the door at 3 o'clock. You know, if you were at 3:01, you had to knock on the door if you were late. Most times, most people weren't. But, you know, if you were late, the door was locked and he would have to go up and open it. And you knew that wasn't a good thing. But that was the expectation. And again, that was teaching that expectation. And showing and saying, look, if you're going to be serious about this, then this is what you have to do. This is what I'm expecting. If you can't do that, that's okay. Then I'll just find somebody else. And so sometimes I think the overall approach at times could be, I'm sure some people could kind of describe it as a little bit heartless, but not heartless like in a bad way, more of heartless of like, look, this isn't about, you know, oh yes, I like you. You're a nice person and you're this and you're that, but this is business. This is work. This is, if we're going to get up here in his case, if we're going to get out there in 9 weeks and we're going to put on a concert that's going to get enough people in the room where we used to play at Kilcawley Center, if we're going to get enough people in that room that they have to call the fire marshal because there's 1,200 people in that room, then we need to make sure we bring everything we have all the time, you know, and bring it to rehearsal. So that was part of it. There was that. And the other part was that he would talk about his experiences. He talked about playing on the road with Woody. He talked about the gigs that he would do around town. He would talk about playing with one of the Cleveland legends, you know, Ernie Krivda. And he would talk about how like playing with Ernie was such an intense experience every time we played, because Ernie's approach was very fast and hard hitting. And so he's like, man, I'd be literally like sweating through my shirt by the end of like the first tune, because it was just like everything was fast. And that was Ernie's thing. But he would talk about that and be like, look, what do you get? You know, it doesn't matter if you're tired after the first tune and you got another 2 hours to go or another hour before you even have a 15-minute break. So what? Nobody cares. And that's kind of like what I mean by the heartless part. It's like, look, nobody cares. You just have to do your job. And so he would talk about that. He would talk about things that happened on the road. And then along with talking about it, he would show us. So if it was not a situation where he was frustrated for something that was going on with the band, he would, on those great days where he would finally be like, he would try to be explaining to the bass player, you know, well, I need you to do this, or I need you to have this. And they'd play and it just wasn't quite happening. Right. So finally he'd just be like, look, and he'd get off from the band. He's like, just give me that thing. And he would sit down, and all of a sudden he would put his hands on that thing and he would get in the position that he has to play, you know, that hunkered down position, and he would count it off. And by the second beat, it was locked in, like all of us knew it. It was almost freaky how like all of a sudden the groove it would just pop. No matter who else was there, it was like, bam. And he would just be like, that's how you're supposed to do it. And that taught us. It's like, wow, man, when you play with a good bass player in a big band, I mean, it makes it so much, all of a sudden our jobs were easier. And again, he didn't have to tell us, or he didn't have to sit there and explain, well, you know, I'm walking this bass line and playing these notes. He'd just be like, here's what you need to do. And here, you know, it needs to go like this. And you would learn from that. And that was a way that he taught us to say, you know, okay, look, if I'm going to be up there, and my take on it was, if I'm going to be up there in front of a band, I better know my stuff better than everybody else sitting in front of me, or at least probably most of the people, because I've had some really, really incredible people play in the band, but you know, that I at least know and have a good idea of what is going on in the music and what I want to happen. So that way people know and understand and have the have the confidence and the respect that I'm going to be able to communicate that, because that's what he did.
Right. So do you have any stories or funny things that you remember?
Funny stories. Well, everybody always has you always hate to talk about it, but the Tony story, the one where, where you got to be the focus of the ire for a moment. And I remember it was first year and it was spring quarter, and he had handed out a bunch of music at the beginning of the year. We did a tribute to Thad Jones in the first concert, which was the hardest concert that I could probably ever think of anybody playing, especially in that band, for our fall concert. But he had handed out some Bob Mintzer charts that I'd known because there were 2 CDs that I listened to a lot, because the bass trombonist on there, whose name is Dave Taylor, he was the guy when I listened to him, I'm like, all right, if I'm going to play this instrument, I want to sound like that guy. So Tony had happened to pass out a couple of the tunes from Incredible Journey is the name of the album. And he also passed out a couple of other funk tunes. And we were also doing a concert. Actually, the concert that we did that spring quarter was the one that we did with John Faddis as the guest artist. And I had a bad rehearsal. It just did. I think I literally think I was trying a different mouthpiece. Like Mike and I were working on something in my lesson and all this stuff. And I was just not having it, not having a good day. And I was hacking through things, and it wasn't good. And at times, like I said, I think he would kind of pick who he knew, who he could talk to and how. And so I could tell he was getting frustrated, obviously, because the things that I was supposed to be playing weren't playing them. I'd have to go back and play them again. They weren't real great happening. So he was just like, you need to come over to the office. And I was like, oh, okay. So I walked in, and he closed the door, and he didn't yell. He didn't, didn't lose his mind about anything. He's kind of walked back and forth and kind of just shook his head. And at that point, he knew I was playing in another band outside of school, going through early things that college people do, and he just kind of looked at me while shaking his head. And it was just like, I don't care how many classes you have. I don't care who you're dating. I don't care what other bands you're playing in. I don't care what other ensembles you're in. And there came the line, which I said earlier, but I need you to understand that from 3 o'clock to 4 o'clock, every time you have this rehearsal, that's the only thing that you have. You need to leave everything outside the door. And if that means that you need to be prepared no matter what. So if you need to not play, if you're playing in too many groups outside of school, whatever you need to do, you need to make sure that you're prepared every time you come in here, because if you can't be prepared, I will tell you right now, I will run this band and I will not use a bass trombone player, because I will not let you bring down the integrity of my band because you're not serious enough to take this seriously. And I was like, whoa, hold on. And I said, look, you can talk to Mike. I had a bad day. I apologize. I'm really sorry. And I did. I said, I'm working on a different mouthpiece, but I understand. I get it. And he was just like, this is really important. And I know you can do it, but if we have another rehearsal like this, we're going to have to, I'm going to have to start considering either somebody else or just something. And I was just like, I understand. And from that point forward, it was like, there it is. That's the expectation. It wasn't loud and yelly or whatever else, but it got the point across. And it taught me. It was like, look, the line that will stick with me forever is, I will not let you bring down the integrity of my band because you're not serious enough. I was like, wow, okay. I would never think to do that, but that's how serious it was for him. And and so that was, that was my moment. Unfortunately, it was early, but and then I'm trying to think of, there's so many other just funny things. There's the different comments that he would make during concerts. Ellen Banks told me a story when I was there at school. And she said, speaking of the intimidation factor, she got called to play a gig, or to do a gig or something, with a trio. And she was she was singing it, and her bass player couldn't make it, or called at the last minute or something. And they said, because she's like, I'm not a jazz person. Like, really, like wasn't really, I mean, I knew those guys, but, and so they said, well, why don't you call Tony? And she was like, I can't call Tony. Are you kidding me? I can't call Tony, and like, just call him. And she said, so I called him up and I'm like, Mr. Leonardi, I have this gig and I have I need a bass player, and she's like, I'm like sitting here just like totally like freaking out on the phone, like all nervous. And like, I get done saying my thing and there's like silence, and he's like, where's the gig? She's like, here, what time do I have to be there? Here's the time. So he gives all the, okay, I'm available. I can do it. She's like, oh, thank you, Mr. Leonardi, and all this stuff. So she's like, so he gets to the gig and he walks in and he's setting up his stuff, and she's got the somebody's got music, I'm sure at some point, a book to read. And so I think she said, either you can ask her, she'll tell you the exact story, but it's like she walked up to give him the book and he didn't have a music stand. And so he walked up and she walks up and she's like, here's your book. And he was like, it's like, there's a book. It's like, yeah. And, of course now he's like, just doing his thing, probably messing with her a little bit too, knowing that, she's a little intimidated. And he's like, oh yeah, didn't you bring a stand? And he was like, you didn't tell me to bring a stand. So, and she's like, and I'm sitting there like, oh my God, he's going to kill me. And I was just laughing. I'm like, yeah, that's pretty funny.
That is funny.
So that's like, you didn't tell me to. Why the hell would I bring it? Why would I bring a stand if I don't have to? And I was just...
I remember, I remember going to a bunch of those gigs at Pyatt Street, Mr. P's.
Yeah, I remember Mr. P's.
I miss those days.
Yeah, it was a good time. And it's what wound up over the years kind of almost forcing me, for no other reason that I just wanted to get together with my friends to keep putting big band gigs together. Just to have the opportunity for people to play. And again, the Youngstown mentality winds up always being, when I wind up calling up whoever it was, guys I went to school with, guys who know me or whatever else, it would always be like, yeah, man, when's the gig? It wasn't, what are we playing? How much does it pay? Do I have to wear a tuxedo, or what, any of the other question? It was just like, yeah, man, you got a gig? Cool, man, let's do it. That'll be great. Because it also winds up being an opportunity for all of us to just hang out together. And then, you talk about old times or talk about new things and hear what everybody's doing. Like we did 5 years, well, now was it 3 years ago, at our 5-year, when we did the 5-year anniversary concert at the Bop Stop. And when you were there for that, I'm pretty sure you were, when Liz and I did our 5-year wedding anniversary gig.
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
yes.
at the Bop Stop.
Yes.
And I had the opportunity to get a bunch of guys to come up and play, and we just, I'm trying to think. Can't remember if everybody got paid or not, but really it was more of just a, hey, it was a party. Hey, we're doing this. And everybody was just like, I don't care. I'll just come up and play. That'll be great. And, just that warmth and that opportunity to just create music with, people that are friends or people that you enjoy or admire or, are inspired by. And that's one of the things that a lot of the guys that I work with have that quality. So it makes it much easier for me, but much more enjoyable, because then it's just like, oh man, you know, I don't know how many times I hear when if I have a sub on the gig, if I'd be like, oh, hey, you know what? I hear this person's out this week. Who's playing? Oh, I got this guy. Oh man, it'll be great to hear him. And it's like that, you know, because people just like to, you know, people like to hear, or people like to see what kind of new energy or different energy comes from, you know, having other people play. So I know that's one of the things that we do, which means, let's see, 2023. So 2.5 years from now, we'll be doing our 10-year anniversary, and I'm sure it'll be another YSU extravaganza.
Oh, I hope so. I hope to
Yeah.
be there.
Yeah.
Well, that's a great segue into my last kind of question topic I wanted to talk to you about is this reunion 22
Yes.
that we're planning.
Right.
And so, you know, that's going to be another opportunity for so many people to get together, spanning many decades of music, jazz at YSU. And so what are your thoughts, or how are you feeling about this, and what are you looking forward to about participating in this?
Well, I think, first of all, I think it was a genius idea. You know, when I can't remember if you and I talked about it, or like if it was a whole, you know, if it was like a group situation, but I remember when you talked about wanting to put on an event, and I'm not really familiar with, because unfortunately I don't have the vinyl of it, but I'm familiar with the Reunion 82 album and all the guys that were on it, and including, you know, Mike Christ, John Olson, who's a good friend of mine. And actually, I think the funny part was, if I remember correctly, John Olson was the like legendary bass trombonist who was in school before me. And when they did the reunion 8, and I think Mike Chris played lead. And I think for the Reunion 82 album, they decided they were going to flip. So I think Mike's actually playing bass trombone on the recording, and John's playing lead.
Oh, wow.
If I remember correctly, I'd have to check, but I remember seeing the names like James Weidman and some of the other guys that were on there. And so when you brought up the possibility, you know, the opportunity or the thought of doing it, I was like, man, that'd be great. But man, it's been 40 years. Really? It's been that long? Oh my God, that's a long time. So it's nice to now look at, or have an opportunity and start looking at putting a project together that there's plenty of lead time, and it will give us an opportunity, give the alumni an opportunity to get together and just, like I said, just have the opportunity to hang out, see where we are, hear each other. I mean, you know, like you said, I guess it was a better segue than I thought, or that I realized, is that pretty much the mentality that I have is the mentality that I know of from almost pretty much everybody that's a YSU alumnus for jazz, you know, for the jazz program. We just want to get together and hang and play music. So what better of an opportunity to sit here and say, well, it's also an anniversary of an album, you know, an anniversary of a concert that your dad did. I don't know, was that the first recording that they did, like the first vinyl recording, or were there, I don't know if there were recordings before that or not. I know there was the Just Friends recording came after that, and When Tomorrow Comes came after that, and then our albums, but I don't know if there's something before. Whatever it is, it's a great opportunity to look at and say 40 years later, to see what people are doing and how they're doing it, and getting the opportunity, at least for some of them, not for all, because I'm sure some people be like, yeah, I don't really even play anymore, but still have the opportunity to come out and be involved.
Yes.
And
exactly.
I think the one thing that is a tremendous focus that you have for this is the mantra and the idea of get as many people involved as possible, you know, as far as coming to the event, as far as somehow or another being involved in the event, maybe not on, obviously not on the planning side and, the logistical side, but again, having an event for people that were alumnus of the program that catches everybody, because, there have obviously been previous situations of alumni concerts and alumni recordings and alumni events, from the jazz program. But and me personally, I've always been kind of on the outside of it because I was never officially a Dana member, so a Dana graduate. So I never kind of really looked at it either way of saying that it was good or bad. But to really look at it and say, you know what, it seemed kind of focused on a certain group of people, and they're all fantastic people and they're all fantastic players, and more than likely a lot of them will be involved in this situation. But it also felt it a little restrictive, and to me, the message and the idea of an event like this and the approach that you're taking is, I want to have everybody that was involved with my dad's music or with the program. And that's fantastic, which is why I'm glad to be involved in it.
I'm so glad to have you involved with it and appreciate all that you're doing, to contribute with that and help get people together and get us all connected so we can start, spreading the word. And even though we're in the really early phases of this,
Sure.
When I initially thought of this, I thought I would just reach out to a couple people, whoever wanted to do it. It would be cool. I had no idea that it would get to this point, even that it's at now, as early on as it is.
Sure.
And without you and Bill and Jim, Mike, Sherry, this is really moving along and it's exciting.
Yeah, I mean, obviously a lot of credit goes to Bill Bodine for starting the scholarship programs with the, seeding the scholarship program. And it's, he was there before all of us. He was there at the beginning, and, he's got the great stories that he tells about, when the band started with, with your dad, with Tony leading it, and how they kind of got him to do it, even though he didn't really want to. But his interest and his passion for wanting to keep that, wanting to build something with the program, because it seems so odd in some ways that you have this just incredible, literally incredible amount of talented people that are alumni of not just, obviously not just of Dana, but of Youngstown State. And there's nothing really like focused or put together where there isn't something like even a yearly thing, or, a 6-month thing, or even the band program or the music program, I think, does a golf outing. Obviously, we're stretching out to people all over the world now. We're out for, now that we have obviously Zoom sessions and everything else, and we're all spread out all over the place. So you have people that can be involved in different levels because of the technology that wasn't available 10 years ago or whatever. But so now we have all these, all these people that are so talented, that are in New York, that are in LA, that are in Florida, that are everywhere. And again, for my own personal thing, when I've come up with thoughts or ideas or, crazy things, if I ever reach out to anybody, the first thing they're always like, yeah, man, I'm on, just let me know. I'm down for it. I'd love to get together and just hang and play, or hang and get together and re-engage in that feeling that we all have for not just being musicians, for sharing that history that we all have, which is why, again, I think this will be a great event as it goes, and it will keep growing, because I think more and more people want to be involved somehow or another. I know you and I have talked a little bit about a project that I'm considering, which might be a little bit, it seems like it would be totally awesome, and I really want to do it, but it also seems a little big, so I have to boil it down just a little bit more, so I'm not so personally overwhelmed by the idea of trying to do it. But I think it'll work out, and I know everybody that I've talked to, because it involves virtual recordings and and being involved virtually for people around the world, that I think it'll work out. It's just a matter of I have enough lead time to do it, so that'll be good.
Right.
But it will be great to see as we get closer and closer to it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And the thought of having the old format of the concerts, the first band, second band, but then having all of these different decades, as I mentioned, kind of intermingled together.
Yeah.
I think I'm really excited about that.
Yeah.
Just hearing those different groups of people play together, because over the years, I started going to concerts when I was probably 8 or 9.
Sure.
And then all the way up until my dad got sick, I was at as many as I could possibly go to. And even when I had days off school, I would go to work with him and go to your rehearsals. And so for me to see everyone again under one roof, all playing together, I can't even imagine how awesome that's going to be.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. It'll definitely be memorable. So, and like we said, I'm sure it somehow or another it'll have to be it'll have to be preserved. That's why I think it even like this too, having the opportunity for some of us to do interviews, to talk about some of the things that our experiences, and then what everybody kind of experienced, and just to talk about it a little bit, to kind of remind us all, and then grow that interest and grow that have the situation grow more and more in people's minds, like, yeah, this is really great. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Well, thank you so much for your time, Eric, and for all of your input and everything that you shared this evening. And I look forward to working with you on this project, and we'll talk soon. Yeah,
definitely. Thank you for all you're doing and for putting it together, and for being the guiding light for having this as a project, and as something that I think is going to be a really, obviously, a once in a lifetime situation for a lot of us, which is really cool. So it's going to be a lot of fun. So thank you for doing that.
Oh, absolutely. My pleasure.
Okay.
All right. Well, you take care.
You too.
Okay.
Have a good one.
You too.
Right.
Bye.
Bye.